Welcome to the Millennial Money Canada podcast. I'm your host, Guillaume Girard, financial planner, wealth manager at Millennial Wealth Advisor. I want to thank you for tuning in. If you're new to the podcast, welcome. Again, our goal with the podcast is to help you elevate your knowledge about money so that you can make better financial decisions that will improve your happiness, your fulfillment, and your quality of life. And I couldn't have a better guest to share this vision and chat about this topic specifically, which is Dr. Christian Wigmore, the founder of BudgetYourMD, which is a platform that he's built to help physicians take control of their finances and build a life of financial freedom and purpose. And even though the conversation from today was mainly around money and physicians, it's applicable to all careers and all walks of life. And as a practicing physician himself, future family doctor, Christian experienced firsthand what it's like to have the financial pressure from coming out of medical school, residency, and early practice. We also talked about the lifestyle inflation creeps, that it can be a huge financial trap that young doctors may fall into, especially as they have competing financial priorities like paying down huge amount of debt, saving, or buying their first home. Christian's goal with Budget Your MD is to empower the next generation of physicians to help them make better informed financial decisions so that they can focus on what truly matters to them, their patients, their families, their long-term well-being. And that can have a meaningful impact in helping them stay in their career longer and avoid burnout, which can be extremely costly to, society as a whole. So it was all in all a great conversation. If you're listening to this episode and you have questions that you might want to ask a professional to get guidance on regarding your finances, helping you get closer to your goals, I highly encourage you to reach out. Links going to be in the show notes. And we have different fee structure and different service model, depending on the type of advice that you're looking to get in return. So with that being said, let's go to the episode. Christian Wigmore, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, it's good to be here. Thanks for having me on.
All right. I want to start first question. Take me back to, your undergrad and your path that led you to choosing a career as a physician. Start from the beginning.
Well, it's a lot of a longer path than I would care to explain, but I guess it started when I was pretty young. I always kind of thought I may want to grow up and become a doctor one day. Maybe after I realized I wasn't going to make it to the MBA. That was the first dream, right? But I always kind of thought I would try to become a doctor, but it's never a guarantee. I went off to university, did a biology degree, but like many, you never know if you'll get in. So I actually did a business degree while I was still waiting, as most people do, to get in. And so I did a degree in science and specialized in biology, and then was able to get a business degree as well, but then finally got into medical school. And so what is that? That's like 6 years ago now. And so then I've done my 4 years of medical school at UBC up in Prince George. So they have a satellite campus up there. And then I'm just about to complete my residency in family practice. So that's the quick summary. But yeah, it's been long, but it's been super fun to be able to, do schooling that has such an impact, I guess, right? Doesn't really feel like school at this point. You just work a lot more than sit in a classroom and listen to lectures at this point. But learning through that is a good way to learn. It's a little bit better than the textbook, if you ask me. But there's always a balance in both.
Yeah. So you have a very interesting background, right? It's kind of finance meet health care professional. So I want to go back to one of your experience actually where you were a assistant at some point so talk to me about this. I think it's an interesting story.
Well, it was around COVID, right? So what was I doing? I just finished university, or was it? Yeah, I just finished university. Didn't know if I was going to get into med school yet. And I was trying to find a job and no one was offering jobs at that time. So I somehow found a way to get the government to pay a grant for this advisor to hire me. And so he got completely granted money to basically pay for my very small salary while I worked for him. But it was super cool because he was an independent, financial advisor through Raymond James. And he kind of took me under his wing, thinking that may be where I go if I don't get into medicine. And I was able to do a bunch of cool stuff with him, more from the client services perspective, kind of meeting with clients alongside him and then doing some like lead generation stuff, which was cool to see the back end of it. But I really got interested in more of the financial side of the back end too, of like where he was putting clients into for investments and just the planning of like, okay, how can we most efficiently take these people's money and try to, provide them the future they're looking for. And that's what I really thought was cool. And to this day, I still kind of think that your profession and that profession, it's kind of like being the physician of money, or like the doctor of the finance world. Like you diagnose the issue, you come up with a treatment plan, and then you set the patient off or the client off to, succeed out in life, hopefully, and maybe not, need to come back. The plan is good. You created the plan. Now let's move on to the next stages. Right. So I don't know. I kind of like thinking of what you do in that way.
I think I'm gonna steal that analogy. So if I want to explain to someone what I do, it's like I'm basically a physician. I just
Yeah,
I need to find the the problem and the health problem, the cause, and then diagnosing it properly, and then providing solutions that are applicable to your specific situation, right?
I
So
love it.
yeah, no, that's good. What's one of the biggest takeaway from your experience with working with that person? If you compare yourself before you walked in that summer internship and you walked out, in terms of your exposure to the financial world, and again, I'm not sure about like his exact approach specifically and how you were involved in the client cases, but yeah, what's one thing that you took away from that?
I don't know if I think this is like my biggest takeaway. I feel like just in general that I like to talk about, but it probably started after working with him. And it's just, you can do so much on the on like, the flashy side of like, okay, let's try to get a rate of return on your portfolio of 12 or 10 or even better. Right. But what I found, it really came down to like the best plans and the best, success that he had with clients and the clients we did work with. They just have like a good sound idea of like where their money's going, right? Like they actually have the ability to go make, a financial move, like buy a piece of real estate, or they're actually able to project where they're going to be 10 years down the road because they actually have an idea of how much money they're spending on a regular basis. So it all comes down to that, like, are you actually aware of the dollars coming in and out in your own kind of your business or your personal business, or your personal income? And with that in play, you get a lot of ability from like, at least the advisor's perspective, but I think from the individual as well, we're able to kind of really create a solid plan that you can actually trust. Like you can't trust the plan well if you don't actually know what's going on in the background from a dollars perspective. And so that was one takeaway that the guy I worked with really brought home. And I thought, I'm never going to forget that from my own, my own finances later down the road.
Oh, that's so key. Like what you're saying is like having a good grasp, or at least a good understanding of yeah, what we call like your own numbers. And we
Hmm.
see that like on personal balance sheets, but you wouldn't believe when I talk to like accountants and I ask them like, hey, what's the number one thing that like you're noticing about business owners? And they'll say they don't know their numbers. Like they don't know like where they stand. And you see that both personally but also corporately. So
Hmm.
regardless of where you're sitting and what's your role or your career, like having a good, man, that's so key. Having a good grasp of your situation, and you can make much better decisions from that point on, right? Instead of shooting from the hips, or, having anxiety and all sorts of emotions that come out uh, from money, right? Money, big money decisions. Yeah. Okay. So
Totally.
you walked out of that, and then I want to know so yeah, tell me more about like family doctor specifically.
Yeah.
Why that over like a number of kind of other options that you guys have, and then after that we can dive into the challenges that you guys are facing as
For
physicians. But
sure.
yeah, yeah.
I always knew I wanted to be a family doctor. It was kind of a no brainer to me. Um, for me specifically, like medicine is all about being able to, work with patients and actually like get to know them on a more personal level. Obviously keeping the professionalism in play, but like you actually get to sit down, see someone multiple times, throughout their life, more than multiple times, sometimes multiple times a month, right? And build that relationship. And I think that's, the beauty of the career for me. I love the medicine, but what I actually love is the ability to connect with people every single day. And so, that's what I think is going to keep me coming back and keep me working into my, later years, is those relationships that you get to build. And they're so unique, right? Like you have your buddies from, university, there's those type of relationships, but these, relationships you get to have as a physician are so, so valuable for us, actually, I feel like it's not talked about enough, but to have someone actually entrust their health with you. And if you can build those relationships, I think it really carries on into the care that you can provide too. So that's where I've always thought family medicine, being over the scalpel and doing a surgery would be cool, but I feel like you wouldn't get to have that personal connection that I'd want to on a consistent basis over a long period of time. And so that's why I've always wanted to do family medicine. And again, you can pull the analogies to financial advising too, right? Like you get to have that longitudinal relationship that, is actually the cool part of the job in some way, right?
You wouldn't believe like what you just said. Like, and I hope listeners are like listening to this, but like whenever someone is entrusting me with like their life savings, like you might not know me like, super personally, but like my level of like integrity, my discipline, how I've been raised, like how I carry myself in life, like I'm a like straight A shooter. Like I'm very serious. But like when someone is like entrusting me with that level, like I know it's not their health, but it's sometimes like the second thing, like after health, I guess money. So
Yeah,
I guess
totally. Yeah.
I would probably put like health, relationships, and then money. I would say probably something like that. But yeah, like it's something I take really to the heart, and like you said, like you start building that deep relationships, and it's extremely like what we do is not, or at least what I do is not high volume per se. So
Hmm.
what I mean is like it's pretty bespoke. So you do get to build those relationships over time. It's more than just once a year, like 30-minute call. It's like quarterly check-ins and whatnot, and like things in between. So you do get to build those relationships. Yeah, man, it's the best thing. Yeah.
It really is.
How hard was it to decide like on family doctor versus everything else for you, or just in general from like your peers as well? Is it a difficult decision, or is it something that is pretty easy?
People have a lot harder time than I think I did. I always came in with some preconceived ideas of what I wanted to do. Now, like you go through medical school and you learn everything, right? So you kind of are like kind of getting an idea of like, is anything giving me that heart sparkle, right? Like, do I really love cardiology, the heart? Do I want to go and become a cardiologist? And so people find their sparkle at some time. The interesting part is that the first 2 years of medical school is all just textbook based. And then it's only in the third year, at least here in BC and at UBC in Canada, you get to actually go into the hospital and see what it's actually like to work in that type of profession, because you work in every area of medicine in that third year. So it's mostly at that time that people decide where they want to go. But yeah, it's a hard decision because it's the rest of your life, right? Like you're making a decision at like, I don't know, mid 20s to like decide the career you're going to do forever. And it's, I would say not ever, never, not 10 out of 10 times do people get it right. They kind of end up practicing and then realize, okay, this wasn't what I thought it was going to be and things like that. So, um, you have to just go with your gut though, right? And certain programs are way more competitive too. If you want to be an ophthalmologist, it's going to be harder than a family doctor, right? You have to go
Yeah.
through a whole process of, applying once you're even done medical school to get into the program you want, right? So it it never ends. You think you're done once you get into medical school, but the stress of interviews and all that stuff continues much longer after that.
Well, I'm glad
Yeah.
that you found your path, and you seem to be very confident with your path, and it's something that uh, I'm hearing from you that it's going to fulfill you, which is really like one of the most important decisions we can make, right? Like where we live, who we spend our life with, right? Our
Hmm.
partner, and then what we do. Like those are if you can nail those three decisions in life, you will live a great life. Yeah,
Can't agree more, man. Those are
yeah.
the equations to happiness, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, so now I want to go into what I would say were my preconceived ideas. So, from a wealth manager, I thought that physicians specifically, because of your high earning potential like over your career, I was under the impression that when you were in school, and then like correct me on like the exact, but like your residency and you're finishing, like you were kind of set. Like you had your career plan, you had your financial plan, you had like kind of your ducks in a row, everything, and then you were kind of like just, I guess, off to the races afterwards, right? And if you were a specialist, then you would be kind of a similar outcome. But when we started chatting, you said, "No way." Like Not even close.
Not from the financial side, but
Yeah.
us doctors, we're all type A, right? Like we'll make
Yeah.
it seem buttoned up because that's the type of people we are. But there's
Yeah.
always a mess behind, the nice picture frame. You just got to kind of know the right areas to knock. That's with everyone, though. I don't think this is just doctors, but financially, it is interesting. Like,
Yeah.
we don't get any training during medical school in finance. And, as you're well aware of, it's a huge part of our lives is, are you, managing that area well and how much that impacts other areas too. And so I think what you're kind of keying into is like such a big deal for Canadian doctors is, having that financial literacy, right? And so it's it it is totally an area that maybe I think is, assumed for us as doctors. Like we all got into medical school. Everyone assumes we're smart. And I'm not saying anyone's not smart. It's just you have to spend so much time focused on the medicine. When are you ever going to go learn about, stocks, bonds, all the different types of investment vehicles and be able to, know exactly how to invest in the proper way or, maneuver your taxes in the proper way and use the proper accounts and stuff. It's basically impossible to try to do that all at the same time, if I'm being honest, because you have to dive so deep into the medicine to be prepared once you're done.
Yeah. So tell me, what would you say are like the biggest challenges that residents are facing? Aside from the obvious, you depending on like that your situation, but like let's say debt would be one of the biggest one. But what are the other things that you see gaps in either
hmm
not either knowledge or awareness or yeah at
So,
your
like, you mentioned debt, and it's going to be pretty hard to answer this question without talking about that because, we start medical school, and basically what I always talk about is you go through 4 years of your life and you don't make any income, right? So you're somehow supposed to live and not make any income because it's impossible to hold a job while you're in medical school. So the bank just gives us these loans, these lines of credit, and it's upwards of $350,000. And it's just go ahead. And obviously, it's great for the banks, right? They make an interest rate on that. And that's basically what we have to use to live off of, unless you're lucky and you're married and you have a partner that's earning income or something like that. And so uh, the the big hurdles are kind of managing that. But I think like to go a little bit deeper, one thing I like to think of is like this lifestyle inflation. Like if you think about one of the hurdles and the pieces of awareness that I think doctors should be more aware, like more conscious of, is that transition when you're finally done. Like you've worked 6 years if you're a family practice doctor, or more if you've gone into specialties or fellowships. It could be 10 years since starting medical school, and you finally get that first paycheck. It's like, how do you not just like say, you know what, I deserve to do this? I need to get a car for myself now. Like I'm a cardiac surgeon. Like obviously, like where's the BMW, right? Or like you finally can, the bank's willing to give you the money too. Like the mortgage brokers are ready. It's like, oh yeah, how much you want, 1.5 million? Like you have the income to back it. So it's the thing that I think gets caught up on sometimes is like jumping too quickly to that lifestyle that we see the doctors we've trained under for years have, which is fancy car, nice vacations, you know, nice homes. And then we're like, okay, it's our turn to do this now. Whereas if you can just delay that for like 5 years, it makes a world of difference for the remainder of your career. If you can like pay off that debt quickly, put a big chunk into savings, and then we're getting talking about like the longevity of your investment that can happen at that point, right? So that's a big area where there's a hurdle, but if you start to think about it the right way, you can potentially kind of offset some of the damage that was done in terms of your debt while you went through the training. Yeah.
so keep managing that. I mean, when I think about that as like or that specific situation, who approaches you first usually to recommend you about like incorporating or any of the like on that side of things, like or when did you start or do you feel that it's time to like hire an accountant or do most physicians, because now a DIYer is even more popular, do they DIY their taxes, or they actually no they actually see the value in accountants?
Oh,
What's the
I don't think many people are DIYing their taxes. I think that's a
okay?
little bit rogue. What
Okay.
ends up happening is there's, I think, MNP comes along and says, we'll do your taxes for free while you're a medical student or a resident. And so you just basically like sign up, they do your taxes for free. And then as we graduate, it's like, okay, now you've been working with us, here's the options. Should you incorporate? Should you not? Obviously, you need your taxes done. We'll continue to do that. But now there's a bill associated with it. And it's kind of like this ease of rolling into kind of your more paid products that you were getting for free, but now you're a doctor, so you can pay for it, right? So that's how a lot of things work. That kind of ends up happening in the insurance area too, and in the like financial advising, like MD management will meet with you as a medical student or a resident to talk about things. I haven't done it, but I'm quite sure it's free of charge. And then obviously things will roll into themselves as you start to actually have money to invest. I think it's pretty rare for med students or residents to have a ton of money to invest at this point, right?
Yeah. Okay. I want to, before we dive into like, BudgetMD, which BudgetYourMD, sorry, which we're going to get into a second. I just want to go through like around the table just to see like what kind of like specialized expertise you guys are getting. So accounting, this is well received.
Yeah.
I think another one too that I'm sure, and we've talked about this, like on the insurance side. So I think you mentioned that before, like disability is highly, I would say, understood or accepted as far as, one of the key protection of someone who is a physician. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
disability insurance, I would, you say it highly understood. I would debate whether it's highly understood
Okay.
or not.
Okay.
But
It's accepted as a concept.
it's accepted as a concept,
Okay.
for sure. Just because, what the heck happens if you suddenly can't do your job anymore, right? And so you need a way to pay for all those things that you started to buy as you became a doctor, I was referring to before. So for sure. Yeah.
And then term life. I mean, we talked about this as well. I mean,
Yeah.
that's also fairly accepted and understood by like the majority of people beyond being physicians.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys are as a segment of the population who's making that kind of money are extremely, I wouldn't say at risk, but targeted per se by all sorts of like strategies. Right? Is a permanent life insurance policy something that you or your peers are being targeted with? And I'm not sure if you're familiar with kind of the different solutions in there.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
familiar with the permanent life insurance options. I think we're definitely targeted. I think it really depends upon the philosophy of whatever advisor they end up becoming attached to. So like obviously if the advisor they're somehow attached to, whether it's from, a friend or family offers it to them, then, it's something that doctors like, oh, it sounds like I should probably do this. Now, there's interesting Facebook groups that have formed, one large one in particular where people bounce ideas off each other. And I would say in general that Facebook group is more pro term life rather than any, whole life or, any options like that, are maybe talked less of at times. There's obviously people arguing why they think it's a good idea, but in general, I'd say people prefer more of a term life from what I've seen when I read through those comments.
Makes total sense.
Yeah.
Can you talk about the sentiment among physicians and of course of that Facebook group, the Facebook group as well, around fee only or what we call like advice only, the model where it's either a flat fee or a fee for planning. Yeah, can you share with me like the evolution of that and how well accepted it is in your circle?
Yeah. So like I obviously haven't gotten fully to that area of my life yet where I've graduated and have a ton of money to invest, but I'm obviously interested in it. And with my history, I have my own opinions with it. And so speaking from my own opinion, I think something like an advice only, advisor, or like a fee for service advisor, I think for doctors, it just kind of hits home of like what we're used to, right? Like in BC, family doctors and a lot of doctors for a long time have worked in like a fee for service model, right? You provide a surgery, the government pays us, a set amount for that. And so I think it's easily digestible for them. And it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Like, I come, you provide me this value, I pay you for that, and boom, we're done. And so I think over time now there's been a little bit of like scrutiny against this AUM model where when a doctor can project out their, you know, years of savings that become millions of dollars in some cases, obviously, what that 2% can mean over a long time if you compound it out. And so numbers like that are shared and people become, oh yeah, that's a great point. And so I think the rise of, desire for a fee for service or advice only planner is definitely happening from what I've seen, which I think is kind of cool. Like it's definitely something I wasn't aware of um, earlier on. Like I worked for an AUM, advisor. So that's kind of how I thought things ran. And I think if I understand things correctly, and you can tell me like the advice only planner, like growth is happening over the last 5 years. Is that correct from your side of things?
If you, sorry, is your question that there's more fee only planner now?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I don't have the statistics, but definitely more than there's ever been for sure. There's a lot more firms that's their entire model. And then
Yeah.
there's going to be a lot more firms like kind of ours in a way where we sort of had like a hybrid model where where we have feet in both buckets in some ways.
Hmm.
So, and then you'll see everything in between. But oh yeah, for sure. You'll see definitely that more. Question for you in terms of that model, like right when you're willing to just pay a fee for a service, which makes total sense, right? Like accountants work that way.
Totally.
The legal field is that way as well. Like, so it's a family model, right? Do you see? Let me explain. When you look at people who have advisors, you generally speaking, right now, what we're seeing is it depends on the generation. So the other generations, by almost all of them will have advisors if they have like some money. And then at the younger you go, the more divided it is, and then the more DIY you find yourself. Is this something that you're also seeing like among your peers? Do you think you and your peers are going to be, especially around your age, are going to be mostly doing DIY and then paying like a fee on the plan? Is that the best optimal way from your perspective?
From my perspective, like that's what I think I'll end up doing. I I think the rise of things like Wealth Simple are way more accepted by my generation than maybe like my father's generation and beyond. The fact that you can just log on to your phone, hook up your bank account, throw some money in there and buy an ETF all within like, you know, 30 minutes. If you've never had the platform before, if you already have the platform, you can be done in seconds. You know what I mean? Is way more accepted by my generation. And so I think if you add that ability that wasn't there 20 years ago, like I don't know if this is accurate, but I think 20 years ago, like at times you'd still have to like call up someone and say, "Hey, I want to buy 10 shares of Apple," and then they would execute the trade for you, right? Like it's crazy where things have gone. And so
Yeah, and they would be
with
on
the
commission. I mean, they would be stuck. If you go back even further, that's like there used to be stockbrokers. Like you're making money just when your clients trades. Like imagine how flawed the incentives are. Like the
yeah,
more your clients trades, the more you make money. So it's like, I mean,
but I think it's all based on like how comfortable you are, right? Like I have a lot of desire to kind of figure out these things from like a personal finance perspective in my long career that I have left. So I think I would enjoy having like this relationship with an advisor where we kind of he provides me some advice based upon where I'm at. I go out and try to execute that. And then, when there's new life hurdles and things that change, we have other conversations to kind of adapt the plan. That's kind of my thinking because, particularly I have a lot of interest in like the all-in-one ETFs that are available these days that, you know, when you track the index seem to perform on a rate that's acceptable to me. And I can't quote research like perfectly, but I know that these index funds perform quite well against like an actively managed fund
oh yeah,
over over certain periods of time if you really took the numbers. And
yeah.
so that's sometimes a highly debated topic, but I always think back to like, was it Warren Buffett or whatever, like challenged those
Oh yeah, yeah. The
hedge
the bet.
funds,
Yeah,
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 the hedge funds to try to beat him out, and he said, "I'll give you like $1 million or something if you can
yeah,
beat out the S&P over
yeah,
10 years."
yeah.
And did anyone end up doing it? I
No,
don't.
no,
Was
he gave it to charity.
They
Yeah,
gave it
so
to
so
charity?
so the bet was I can't remember his name right now, but the bet was Warren told him, "Hey, you can pick the 10 best hedge funds that you think are the best on the street. Um, we compare them the 10 best against the S&P 500 over a 10-year period, and if you're on top, um, I can't remember who ended up doing, but it was like, yeah, I'll give you 1 million, or you give me. Ultimately, it went to charity. But
Yeah,
yeah, he won. He won the bet, but at first he was losing. At first he was
yeah.
losing. Hedge funds were up, but like over time, I mean, when you look at like the fees and everything, and like just how like broad market indexes are performing. But yeah, I mean, over 90% of active fund managers underperform the S&P 500 over a 15-year period. So it's extremely,
Totally.
extremely hard to, the odds are very much against you. So I mean, that concept is broadly accepted. It's fascinating in our industry. I would say probably maybe 20%. Again, don't like quote me exactly on that, but I would say maybe less than 20% of advisors are still doing like index or factor-based funds. And then you probably have the 3/4 that are still active, which is fascinating to me, right? Like when you think about
Hmm.
everyone at the bank at 2.5%, right? Like that's on like, with no service. Like anyway,
Yeah,
we're digressing here. I
we
want
are. We
I
are.
want to take the conversation to Budget Your MD. Talk to me about what it is, the inspiration behind it, and yeah, what the listeners need to know. Yeah, that's what I want.
Cool. So, like, BudgetYourMD is just my passion project. So, I kind of said how I worked for this financial advisor. I get into medical school and I'm like, holy smokes, like, no one's, talking about this in the first place. There's not really any, you know, education at all. There's no lecture time from, from 4 to 5 p.m. at the end of a block on Friday where they actually talk about financial management. So I was like, you know what? Someone's got to do it. I like this stuff. I'm going to start a platform that does this, where I'm just going to like talk about mainly like my experience and like my learnings rather than being prescriptive because I'm not a professional in the area. So I can only really comment on what I've done and what I'm thinking. But the idea behind it is I have this small belief that I think is true to a degree that doctors experience burnout in their career because they've unfortunately had some financial, hiccups along the way, whether it be the debt that became overwhelming, that they kind of end up getting strapped to working long hours that they maybe didn't want to spend doing. They're trying to catch up on debt or catch up on the house they decided to buy with a large mortgage payment, and they're stuck trading time for money because we don't have any leverage as doctors to scale a company or anything like that, right? It's basically if you want to earn the next dollar, you got to work the next hour, right? And so then they start working these long hours, get burnt out, and then unfortunately, you know, end up being unhappy in their career. And so I'm like, why don't we start early, educating, talking about financial literacy, talking about the things like I was saying, the fundamentals of a financial plan or just personal finance in general, like budgeting, knowing where your money's going. And so I was like, I'll try my best to start it now. And so it's been a little bit of a journey, but I'm what 4 or 5 years now into doing it because I kind of started it more in my second year. And it's super cool because I've had, colleagues that I've had cool conversations with, able to kind of like talk about my approach to things. They share theirs. And now we have like small groups that meet on a monthly basis and are keeping up to date on their budgets and stuff. And so I'm excited about where it's going because this is the next crop of doctors that are coming up, right? And so I think with this, maybe it can make a small impact on like the burnout issue in medicine across Canada. Because there's a lot of these things in the US, but Canada's so different, right? That there's not enough conversation about this specifically for the subgroup of doctors, right?
Man, if that could reduce like the impact that the financial stress that is causing, doctors to burn out on top of like the stress from the career itself. I mean, you would alleviate like a huge burden, right? Like that you would help them manage at least that side of things, which could like
Yeah.
lengthen the career and improve the happiness. And like we know how money and happiness are related, not necessarily the amount of money you have, but how your relationship to it, like how much it
Hmm.
has an impact on all areas of your life, right? Whether you like it or not, money's everywhere. So yeah.
And that's my thinking too. Like this isn't about like me like doing anything amazing for you. It's more like empowering my colleagues to be like, hey, like you can do this. Like you're in
Yeah.
medical school right now, like figuring out your budget and like getting a simple idea of how some of these things work, like isn't hard. Let me like kind of like empower you to like just learn the basics because the basics go a long way, right? It's finance is kind of one of those things like knowing this 80% brings you so far and the additional 20 like is kind of, it's not irrelevant. It definitely helps a little bit, but like the first 80% is such an important piece, right?
Yeah, 100%. Can you talk about like what are the services exactly like that you're offering as part of the budget, and you like what do people sign up for or get, from following you on on that
Yeah,
journey?
so the first thing I made was something I just made for myself. I took my budget that I had and the
Yeah.
debt that I currently had, and I was like, okay, well, I need to figure out what specialty I may want to go into. Like, what do these specialists even get paid? So I create this projection based upon my current spending, like I was saying. So I kind of knew that where it may go depending upon where I move, but then looked at the different specialties and how quickly I could pay off my debt based upon the specialty I chose. And that's looking at like the duration of the specialty too. Like doing family medicine 2 years, then making a doctor's salary, how much quicker do I pay off that debt? And how much longer does it take for like, someone who did a 7-year residency in, a specialty that'll pay a lot more as a family doctor to catch up to me, right? And so I played that game for myself and then I said, well, this is kind of cool. Maybe I should make this tool available. And so now on my website, I have like a whole calculator that people can throw their numbers into, their debt, and then choose actually 3 different specialties. And then I create, it's a very generalized, it's not perfect. I make sure to say that, but it gives them an idea of approximately like how quickly they'll be able to pay off that large sum of debt they'll likely graduate with. And then base that on, going into family practice. Ophthalmology is always the fun one because it's like the one that would pay the most. And then, I don't know, obstetrics and gynecology or something like that in the middle. And then you can compare the plans. So that's one of the cool things. And then other than that, like I have a newsletter that comes out monthly. I have a group where we meet together and try to stay accountable to actually completing our budget. So every month we come together. Okay, who's completed it? I share a little bit of tips and tricks of what I learned about, budgeting from this month. Cause you always learn something new. Oh, shoot, my tire popped this month. How do you actually prepare in your budget for an unexpected expense like that? And what else do I have? I have like a playbook for like for a medical student that they can look through that goes year by year and highlights like the tips and tricks that they should know as well. And between years like 1 and 4 to make sure they're using like all their benefits correctly and stuff like that too. So yeah,
Can you talk about like some of the like common ones that you're highlighting in that playbook?
there's
Yeah.
tons. Like
Oh,
we kind of end up getting like granted a lot of the benefits that doctors get. So like for like if you're ever traveling, you can get like discounts at hotels and on like rental cars and stuff like that. But then as you go into residency, there's specific benefits for like massage and all that stuff that you should be using. But then I also talk about like the different disability insurance options and what you don't want to be missing out on. And then I do talk a little bit about just like the psychology behind personal finance. Like if you're in 3rd year and you suddenly need a car, like should I buy a used car? Should I finance a car? Like how should I go about, getting the 4 wheels to get me from my house to the hospital, and talking about those common questions. And then also like student loan repayment and like how you can get student loans repaid if you work in certain areas and how that works. Kind of just taking all the things that you could find by hours of Googling and like going to the different websites that I did into one like 25-page playbook that'll kind of highlight it all. So that was my thinking in creating that.
huh. That's so and how is it like how do your peers find it? What's been like the feedback and
The feedback's been great. I had like a group of people who basically signed up early that I was able to give it to completely for free. And now I think I have it for like $19. And so people download it, they get it. And then I quickly ask them like, how did it go? Did you enjoy it? And I've gotten good reviews. People are like, oh, this is like what I wish I had all the way through. I wish I bought this in 1st year rather than 4th year right now. And so it's been cool to get that feedback. And so I still need more people to know about BudgetYourMD. Unfortunately, it's hard, right? It's hard to make everyone know about it, but I take that playbook and I print it off and I throw it on like um, in the lounges at different hospitals that I'm going near to, so that the people can just flick through it during their lunch break and stuff too. So I'm trying my best.
yeah, that's awesome. What's one like some of the things that you've been kind of surprised with by building Budget MD, or either through like your conversations with you said with the networking group, or like what are some of the things that you didn't expect that you learned about yourself or about others?
I think the things I didn't expect were like the benefit of like having people going towards like the same goal together, and how little like the discussion is in medicine around money. It's kind of this taboo, right? Like as doctors, we're not supposed to talk about money. It's like it's this altruistic career, right? We're in it for serving for our patients, which is 100% true, right? But behind the curtain is still, someone who's getting a paycheck and is trying to figure out how they're going to live their life. And so the thing that I think has surprised me is like the feedback of like, thanks for actually like bringing this topic up and being willing to talk about it, because Like, for example, you go on a rotation to work with another doctor who's been practicing for years. It would be very awkward of you to like ask that doctor, like, how much do you make? Or like actually bring up like the money aspects, because that's like not at all what you're supposed to talk about. And so I think it's refreshing, and I wish I had it at times. And so I kind of want to be that person that's willing to talk about it, about, that side of medicine, although, it isn't the reason why we're doing it, but it's definitely a part, right?
Yeah, yeah. That's so you're facilitating the conversation around it, which is awesome because I mean, personally, like I grew up in a household where we never talked about money at the kitchen table, right? So and some people grew up in households where people were very open with finances and even the, spouses were open with each other. And I see it today I will never work with just one spouse or the other. Like the two spouses, I work with both. We're a team, right? We work the three together. Everyone is on the same page. Everyone is agreeing to the plan. And I'm telling them like, hey, I'm saving your marriage here. Like this is like you don't want to be growing apart. Like this is not something you want to you put under the rug type of thing. You want to be upfront and you want to be on the same page, right? This is a healthy thing. But for the most part, maybe it's a generation thing, but for the most part, like the people at least that have engaged with me, they've already had like amazing communication around money, which I always acknowledge and I always like let them know like, hey, this is very unique. Like make sure you keep that. This is one of the best habit, that you can develop for
Mhm.
yourself. So and then you're bringing that, yeah, to like the field because that's interesting. Yeah, yeah,
It doesn't come easy though. Some people, I think, just in
yeah,
general, based upon how they're raised and their comfortability, just would never come to, my cash flow clinic and talk about their budgeting and stuff. You know what I mean? And I always say that. So you can have camera off and just listen if you want to, right? And so some
yeah,
people do that. Which is totally fine.
yeah. Oh, that's awesome. So where are you looking to like go with this? Like how are you looking to expand Budget UMD? What's your long-term vision with what you're creating there?
Oh, I think every single night I have a different vision as my head hits the pillow and I start to dream a little bit about where it would go. I don't know if I have a specific, this is exactly what it would look like, but the vision and the mission is to impact, the the financial literacy and education that doctors receive early in their career, right? I think for me, like people end up getting interested in doctors, like the professionals, once they're actually doctors, and they're kind of left a little bit when they're still early in their career. So I want to make the impact while they're still early, because we know that impact early creates the best situations later down the road for them. And so um, by doing that, like I would hope to kind of create this like funnel, or not a funnel, but like this like growing population of doctors that are actually well educated from like a financial perspective. They understand that 80%, so that they can move forward and like live a satisfying career in medicine that is less, plagued by financial stress that leads to that burnout. So how that happens, I think it just happens from having real conversation that is actually meaningful and unbiased and is coming from someone that they can trust, and ask open questions to. I think that's where like real learning can occur, because you have to be able to be vulnerable about, your finances, as you would know, to actually like learn about what's going on for your own situation. And so that's the vision for me. How that rolls out over time, I'm just a solo guy doing this right now. And so um, I can only do so much. I need to find some students that are similar minded to me that would join on the team, and then we can start growing it even more. But for now, we're going at a pace that I think is exciting, and I'm looking forward to where it goes in the future.
And sorry, right now you mentioned you're hosting clinics. Like
Yeah,
how is it? Yeah, how is it delivered? Like at this point in time?
I call it Cashflow Clinic. That's what I call my monthly meetup, and so it's just on
Okay.
Zoom
Okay.
every month, and we meet and we chat. I present, basically, I share my budget for the month, super transparent. Like here's where all of my money's gone, and all categorized so that they get an example, because no one's probably ever opened up a budget to some people and shown them what it looks like, because they've never done it themselves. So here's an example. Here's me. You can see that I spent, $60 at Lululemon this month, you know what I mean? And that went into my clothing budget for the year. And so that's kind of, I want to teach through vulnerability and just like transparency of like how I'm doing things, basically.
That's a good, I mean, it's also keeping you extremely accountable. And
And I love that part of it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's what which is awesome. I know you're not doing this for that per se, but it also like has that like feedback loop, which is like reinforcing your habits as well as instilling habits in others that are looking to develop what you're looking to master, right? That's the
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't miss my monthly budget anymore. Like, I have to
Yeah.
keep on top of it. And I have
You
this like
can't.
this thing that I have to prep for. And my prep is basically like actually doing my own work. So it's cool that way, right?
Okay, that's yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Have you ever considered like any audio or podcast stuff? I know that's a huge undertaking, but others in the country have kind of like taken that route, but I don't know if they're still practicing though. So I think they might have a lot more time on their hand, you know.
I've considered it. Like, I like chatting in this format, right? And so I've considered starting podcasts. We'll see where it goes. A little teaser, I guess. I really would love to start a podcast where I interview doctors that are further along and be like, "Hey, like, you chose to become, you know, a dermatologist. Like, how has that decision gone for you? Like, let's peel back, the layers of this. Let's open the curtain. Like, has that been something that's created a good life for you from, like, the things beyond just, being a dermatologist? Like, do you get time with your family? Do you get the work-life balance you wanted? And ask those questions that you can't ask when you're that young student trying to figure out where to go. And so we'll see. We'll see. That might come down the pipe here in a few months, but it's still kind of in the thinking process right now.
Man, I encourage you. I mean, and that would be so valuable, especially to like aspiring students to be able to tune into the podcast and like listen to different career like experiences essentially, right? And like maybe they would and learning from their good decisions and maybe not so good decisions, right? So
Mhm.
yeah, because how much mentoring are you getting when you're trying to make that decision? Is the onus on you, or are there like are specialists kind of like coming in and doing presentations?
So UBC will like give us, I think it's called Specialty Cafe or something, where you can go meet with dermatologists and talk to them about that stuff. Um, but it's hard. We're all busy, right? It's always on like a Tuesday night when like you've been working all day. Like, do you have that effort to do it? And most people do. One of the things I find interesting though is I find people, and I was kind of this way too. You end up going into the specialty that sometimes you like find the best mentor in. You know what I mean? You're on a rotation. Say you're doing a rotation in psychiatry and the psychiatrist you're working with is like a super nice person. And you're like, whoa, like, I really like psychiatry. And I sometimes think it's partly because the person you're working with is like this role model or this person you'd like to be like. And then sometimes people end up going towards a career like that where they actually have met like a doctor that's shown them who they may want to be or really like was a great preceptor for them. And so that's interesting too. So if you have those relationships, sometimes they can become that mentor too, and you can actually bounce ideas off of.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
makes sense. I mean, if I look at like my own life, like the people that you role model, like I role model or like I look up to, whether like I know them or not, whether most of them they don't even know it, right? And those are the people that will influence like who you're gonna become. So it makes total sense that you would make a decision based on that because you're echoing maybe the same values, the same style, and that's some things that inspires you, right? So
Hmm.
yeah. Well, Christian, do you have any last words on the podcast for the listeners about maybe Budget Your MD or
Nothing specifically. It's been sweet to be on here. I appreciate all the questions. If there are any medical students listening, hey, like, this stuff matters. I think I've been trying to like give that point through kind of some of the discussion we've had today. But even if you're not a medical student, like, starting early and thinking about these things and learning that 80% of what it means to kind of like have good financial literacy and education, I think makes that impact for the rest of your life, regardless of whether you're a doctor, you're a plumber, whatever the heck you're doing out there in the world, helping people. Taking, some autonomy in this just is such a game changer. And I think that matters. I think the whole conversation we had today, although it's about specifically kind of like doctors and stuff, can be applied to everyone, right? Like, this stuff is so key. And so I think that would be something I would just want to leave out there for everyone. Just everyone thinks about it, right? Everyone thinks about their money. It's just about kind of getting in that little bit of uncomfortable, like going and having a conversation with someone, having that conversation with your partner, if that's the situation, right? So I think those are my parting words.
Yeah. No, those are great. I mean, I'm taking a few takeaways from this episode, but one of them is, yeah, being kind of, how, for lack of better words, like interested in your financial well-being and being proactive about it. That's one thing. And that's one thing I noticed, the people who are reaching out to me, especially because I've only been, I would say, in this specific field for, let's say, just over 2-ish years now. And I've been in the investing world for about 10
Oh,
years.
wow.
But now that's what I'm noticing. I'm like, who's reaching out to me? And they always have the same traits, and they're all interested in their financial well-being. And it makes
Hmm.
sense, right? If people like really hate anything about financial planning, like the last thing they want to do is get in touch with a financial planner. So now it sounds obvious, but I think a lot of the role that you're playing in the physician world, but also in the broader world, is trying to entice people to be proactive on that front, right? But the other thing too that I'm taking away from today is, and I'm not saying like you're not in a pedestal, but like, let's say, think about physicians, and you're talking about maybe like a very high earning career and all that stuff. And a lot of things that like you brought up that you put in your like master plan or budget plan, you call it, they're all like very like basic stuff that everyone thinks about, right? Like being on top of your budget. Should you buy or should you rent? Should you finance a car? Should you like, it's all the same decisions regardless of your income level. Like
Yeah.
everyone needs to make the same type of decisions. The budget and the capital available might be different. Like surpluses available might be different, but ultimately it's all the same thing. So anyway, I just thought it was very fascinating and interesting. It's not those like esoteric, complex, necessarily like financial planning strategies that maybe would be only catered to like a certain subset of society. It's like, no, like those decisions are transcending all careers and professions, right? And wealth levels. Yeah.
The building blocks are the building blocks, right?
Yeah.
Like you can only put the icing on a cake that's baked, right? You got to bake the
Yeah.
cake first, and then you can put icing and sprinkles and all the fancy stuff on top. You got to have the basics, man. Yeah.
Yeah. That is so well said. Hey, Christian, thank you so much. For the listeners, I'm going to put the website link in the show notes. You can also find Christian, I know, on LinkedIn for sure.
Hmm.
I'm not sure if you're on Instagram as well, but mostly like LinkedIn, right? And the website.
Yeah.
Perfect. And you'll find also, my LinkedIn as well. And then if you have any questions, you can always go to mwadvisors.ca, book an intro call, and then get in touch, and then we can guide you in the right direction or answer any questions you may have. But Christian, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Thank you for your time. And yeah, listeners, we'll see you on the next episode.
Thanks for having me. It was great.